Strait. The strait that prices the world. The Strait of Hormuz is not merely a geographical feature. It is a structural choke point embedded inside the architecture inside the architecture of global economy. It compresses vast flows of hydrocarbons into a narrow maritime corridor, forcing a disproportionate share of world's energy lifeline through a space that is both physically constrained and politically volatile. In doing so, it transforms itself from a pricing mechanism, inflation often explained through monetary expansion or demand shocks, in this case becomes a function of geography and power. The Strait of Hormuz acts as a lever through which localized disruptions propagate into global price instability. Geographic constraint as economic power. This strait lies between Iran to the north and Oman to the south, functioning as the only maritime exit from the Persian Gulf. As its narrowest is at roughly 33 kilometers wide, with shipping lanes even tighter due to navigation constraints. The physical block the physical bottleneck means that a significant proportion of global oil exports cannot diversify routes easily. Unlike overland trade corridors, which can be rerouted with infrastructure investment, maritime choke points impose hard constraints. The Strait of Hormuz is one such constraint, and it is binding. Energy flows and systematic exposure. A substantial share of world's oil and liquefied natural gas passes through the corridor daily. Major exporters such as Saudi Arab, Iraq, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar rely on the Hormuz to access global markets. The concentration risk is obvious. When multiple producers depend on a single corridor, any disruption transforms from a local event into a systematic shock. This is not diversification failure, it is a structural inevitability dictated by geography. Oil as the base layer of inflation. Oil is not just another commodity, it is an input into nearly every economic activity. Transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, logistics, even digital infrastructure depend on energy. When oil prices rise, they cascade through the cost structure of the entire economy. It is known as cost push inflation. The Strait of Hormuz becomes critical because it influences the marginal price of oil, particularly during periods of uncertainty. Market price risk, not just supply. Even the possibility of disruption in Hormuz can trigger price increases before any physical shortage occurs. The risk premium mechanism. Financial markets embed geopolitical risk into commodity prices through what is effectively a risk premium. When tensions rise in the region, traders anticipate potential supply disruptions and bid for up oil futures. This behavior amplifies the influence of the strait. The physical flow may remain unchanged, but price increases because the probability distribution of future supply shifts. In this way, Hormuz controls inflation not only through actual disruption but through perceived vulnerability. Shipping cost and insurance multiplier. When tensions escalate, insurance costs for vessels passing through the strait increases sharply. War risk premiums are added, raising the cost of shipping even before fuel prices rise. Shipping companies pass this cost on to importers, who then pass them on to consumers. This creates a second order inflationary effect. The initial shock in energy markets multiplies as it moves through logistics networks. The strait thus acts as both a primary and secondary driver of inflation. Liquefied natural gas and electricity prices. Beyond oil, the strait is critical for liquefied natural gas exports, particularly from Qatar. LNG is a key input for electricity generation in many countries. Disruption in LNG flows raise electricity costs, which then affect industrial production and household consumption. This introduces a third order inflationary effect. Energy prices influence not just transport and goods but also utilities, creating a broader inflationary base. Food system and fertilizer linkages. Energy prices are deeply intertwined with food production. Fertilizers are energy intensive to produce, particularly nitrogen based fertilizers derived from natural gas. When energy costs rise due to Hormuz related disruptions, fertilizer price increases as well, leading to higher agricultural costs. These costs translate into food price inflation. The strait therefore indirectly influences global food security by controlling a key input into agricultural productivity. Monetary policy transmission. Central bank responds to inflation by adjusting interest rates. When Hormuz driven energy shocks push inflation upward, monetary authorities face a dilemma. Raising rates can control inflation but risks slowing economic growth. Keeping interest rates low supports growth but allows inflation to persist. This tension forces central bank into reactive position. The state thus exerts influence not only on prices but on macroeconomic policy decisions across the world. Asymmetric vulnerability across regions. Not all regions are equally exposed. Asian economies such as China, Japan, South Korea, and India are heavily relied on Gulf energy imports. Their industrial structure makes them particularly sensitive to energy prices fluctuations. Report while diversified still Europe, while diversified, still faces indirect exposure through LNG markets and global price linkages. North America is relatively insulated due to domestic production, but remains affected through global pricing mechanisms. Inflation therefore spreads unevenly, but inevitably. Limited bypass capacity. Some infrastructure exists by bypassing the strait, such as pipelines from Saudi Arabia and the UAE to alternate ports. However, these routes have limited capacity relative to total export volumes. They can mitigate but not eliminate disruption risk. The existence of partial alternatives reduces but doesn't neutralize the strait's power. The bottleneck remains binding under stress condition. Strategic behavior and power projection. Control over strait is not merely a logistical issue, it is a strategic asset. Iran, by virtue of its geographic position, holds the ability to threaten disruption even without exercising this capability. This implements that threat influences global markets. Military presence by external powers, including naval patrols by the United States, reflects recognition of the strait's importance. The equilibrium is maintained through deterrence, but the underlying vulnerability still persists. Feedback loops and market amplification. The inflationary impact of Hormuz is amplified through feedback loops. Raising oil prices increases production costs, which reduces output, which in turn tightens supply further. Simultaneously, higher prices reduce consumer purchasing power, leading to demand contraction. Markets oscillate between inflationary pressures and recessionary risks. The strait acts as a trigger point for these cycles, accelerating transitions between economic states. Historical precedents and market sensitivity. Past conflicts and tensions in the region have repeatedly demonstrated the strait's influence. Even minor incidents have led to sharp spikes in oil prices. Markets have learned to react quickly, embedding sensitivity into trading behavior. This historical memory ensures that future disruptions will likely produce immediate and amplified responses. The strait's power is reinforced by precedent, structural dependency, and the absence of substitutes. The global economy remains structurally dependent on fossil fuels despite transitioning towards renewable energy. The dependence ensures that choke points like Hormuz retain their relevance. Renewable energy reduces long-term exposure but doesn't eliminate short-term exposure and vulnerability. Until energy systems are fundamentally restructured, the strait will continue to influence inflationary dynamics. The strait as an inflation engine. The Strait of Hormuz functions as an inflation engine because it sits at the intersection of geography, energy, and geopolitics. It amplifies supply, concentrates risks, and amplifies shocks. Its influence operates through multiple channels, including commodity pricing, logistic costs, financial markets, and policy responses. Inflation in this context is not merely a monetary phenomenon, but a spatial one. Final assessment. Control without ownership. No single actor fully controls the strait, yet its existence imposes control over global economic outcomes. This paradox defines its power. It is not owned, but it is governed. It does not produce energy, but it prices it. It does not set policy, but it shapes it. As long as the global economy depends on energy flows constrained by geography, the Strait of Hormuz will remain a central determinant of inflation.